今年係香港好重要嘅一年，中英兩國已經協議將香港歸還翻俾中國。
打咁多份工，揾咁多錢，想做咩？
我身份證。假成咁，俾翻錢我。喂！
黑社會係咁噶啦，使唔使理你啊？
我唔入黑社會。你邊度㗎？我想換錢。咁真係搞事咯！入得嚟成寨，你幫人，人幫你。送聲阿希，
喺嗰邊啦，唔該。
你可以一覺瞓天光，唔係因為城寨，係因為城寨嘅人。
我要趁到官死。做嘢！
今次你保佢唔住嘅。
以後城寨啊，就係你哋班後生仔嘅天下啦。
使唔使幫手啊？
三姑，點解你唔早講？
叫雞啊！
Hey everybody, it's Sid from Cool Movie Gram, your source for everything about cool film. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, check out my other videos, leave me your comments and let me know what you think. I know it's been a long time since I've actually made my last video and decided, you know what, I need to get back onto this and try and at least put some more content out. And here we are. And today, of course, it's not a Blu-ray to review, but of course it's a film. I actually was lucky enough to actually watch in the cinemas. The movie is Twilight of the Warriors, Walled In, which is a 2024 film from Hong Kong, directed by Soi Cheang, and it stars Raymond Lam, Louis Koo, Richie Jen, Philip Ng, and a host of others. And it's an action and action martial arts triad movie. Okay, let's just get into it. The film starts off, it's set in the 80s based on a comic book called City of Darkness by a creator named Yu Yi. And the film itself starts off in the 80s. It's where we meet Chan Lok Kwan, played by Raymond Lam, who's a Vietnamese refugee who's trying to kind of like get an ID card so he could actually get by. But he's kind of like having a little scraps for money in a club, which is run by Mr. Big, played by Sammo Hung, who's like a local drug kingpin, and he just wants to kind of like gain more power. But things kind of go sour for Chan, who ends up kind of seeking refuge in the Walled City, which is an actual place in Kowloon, which was demolished, I think, in 1993. And yeah, this is a place where pretty much it was like a kind of like a shanty town, kind of like plot slums, which pretty much everything was stacked upon. Like you had all these apartments where poor people were living, and it was pretty much regulated by the triads. And in here, this is actually the territory of Louis Koo's character Cyclone, who's kind of like a boss of the walled city, who runs a barbershop, but he also oversees that there's no troublemakers or shit stirrers, as they say, as they would end up dead. And of course, Chan Lok Kwan himself is not really welcome in the city at first. He's kind of seen as like an outsider who's kind of like just trying to get by. But then eventually his he kind of builds a bond with three of like the younger in residents of the walled city. You have Shin, played by Terence Lau, who's Cyclone's right-hand man, and you have Tony Wu playing 12th Master, who's kind of like a katana-wielding gangster who's loyal to a gangster named Tiger, played by Kenny Wong, who is Cyclone's sworn brother, and also AV, played by German Chung, who's kind of like a medic, but he also runs like a pawn shop within the walled city. And he kind of bonds with these characters, and even even Cyclone is actually kind of taking a liking to Chan Lok Kwan, sees him like a surrogate father, a surrogate son, and he kind of starts doing odd jobs, and he sees that he's actually a hard-working person, and he's earnest, doesn't have any kind of bad feelings, and he kind of he becomes like pretty much one of the residents. But there are other forces, as Richie Jen's character Chow, who's kind of like the landlord of the walled city. He's kind of after the son of a gangster named Jimmy, who had actually died in a fight earlier on, as we see at the start of the film. Jimmy's played by Aaron Kwok, who makes like a cameo in the movie, and he had actually kind of executed Chow's family, and he wants to get an eye for an eye. He's after the man who is supposedly Jimmy's son. But then, of course, Mr. Big and his right-hand man, King, played by an amazing performance by Philip Ng. They kind of are trying to, capitalize on the fact that the walled city is about to be demolished, since there's the handover that's looming in 97. So they're thinking, why don't we take over so we could actually kind of like make money off this. But then, of course, this kind of brings more trouble into the walled city, as kind of like there's Mr. Big and of course his cohorts decide to just literally run amok so they can take over and just make money. But then it is up to Chan Lok Kwan and of course his compatriots and Cyclone and everyone to actually protect the territory, to refrain from the residents getting harmed. But what ensues is just insanity. I didn't want to give too many kind of plot points away. Okay, so my review of the film, wow. I mean, to be honest, what I really loved about this film is just the details that this film actually kind of captured in terms of like the sets of the walled city. They were pretty much very true to life. Now, I mean, I have seen some films that were actually filmed in the walled city, like for example, Johnny Mac's masterpiece Long Arm of the Law, where the actual finale was actually filmed within the actual Kowloon walled city at the time in 84, and also I think it was Crime Story, which actually the demolition of the walled city was actually captured on film for the finale of that film with Jackie Chan. And this actually kind of brought it to life. It's just this kind of like very kind of like close-knit community where it's just full of so many people, but at the same time it's just that it's kind of seen as this place where it's not really the cleanest. It's just full of wires, and everything just seems to be kind of like every seedy activity is available within. Any kind of vice, any kind of like anything that's illegal would always be available there. But it's kind of seen as like a haven for any gangster to take over, because it's just so kind of like profitable at the end of the day, because technically, from what I heard, was that the police were at one point afraid to walk into the walled city because they couldn't just take over. And you know, it's just the visuals of the film were really good. There was some CGI used, but it was very effective. It was done really well. The cinematography, again, it just captures that grittiness of it and the flashiness. The action, oh my days, wow. You know, the action is just like so kind of kinetic, and you know, at times, because bearing in mind this is actually based on a Chinese comic book. I mean, you do some of the characters, they have some sort of kind of like almost fantasy like movements, and some of the action is kind of like hyper stylized in that sense, but at the same time it retains a lot of grittiness. There's a lot of bloodiness to it as well. And in terms of the performances, I thought Raymond Lamb did absolutely great as the kind of the outsider who's looking to kind of like find a place to fit in and get by. And you know, his performance was kind of his chemistry with like Terrence Lau, even Louis Koo and Tony Leung and German Chung. I mean, their kind of like chemistry is kind of really it's really believable. It was actually very kind of convincing. Like, you know, they kind of like, you see their kind of camaraderie and their brotherhood. I mean, it's just, you know, really kind of like, you know, it's impressive to see that you got this kind of like younger generation of actors that are actually kind of like coming up in Hong Kong, when people were pretty much writing off Hong Kong cinema as like, you know, the glory days have gone. But then this is just a really great thing. I mean, Louis Koo was incredible as the Cyclone. I thought his character was just kind of this stern kind of figure who's kind of, you know, got his own kind of issues that he's dealing with, but at the same time it's like, you know, he has like this really kind of like iron grip rule over the walled city kind of like turf. And Richie Jen again as Chow, he, you know, when he did appear in the film, it was actually, his character was kind of like brought to depth, you know, brought to life, and there's a lot of depth involved on his character and his motivations and reasons why he is what he is. I mean, that kind of explains everything. And even Sammo Hung, who's kind of billed as like a guest appearance, like a kind of like a very small supporting role as kind of like one of the negative characters, Mr. Big. He's very convincing as a bad guy, and he kind of had that kind of swagger about him. You know, just kind of laying back, smoking a cigar, and just kind of like just you know, taking, you know, just saying things what he wants to do. But then, as many people have already said about this film who have actually watched it, I would say Philip Ng, a crazy kind of like mullet kind of, you know, mullet having kind of, you know, gangster who's just kind of literally just has a lot of like, who's just someone who's just has fun being bad. And you know, his you know, the use of like the fact that his character has this kind of qigong kind of like martial arts where, you know, it's hard to hurt him, and you know, it's just it's really good. Even Aaron Kwok's kind of cameo as Jimmy, that was quite kind of like interesting to see the backstory behind these characters and their motives. And you know, everything, it just pieced together really well, because I went in thinking it's just going to be a straight up martial arts triad movie. Like, you know, I thought it was just going to be like maybe Young and Dangerous just with a bit more kung fu, but this was a lot more, because it was kind of like pretty much, because these characters are kind of introduced and they're kind of like detailed in a way, they are absolutely like, you know, pretty much like perfectly cast. And you know, it just brings like you know, it was kind of like, it just kind of sucks you into the world. You know what I mean? The fact that some of the cinematography, especially where you kind of like, just the camera just follows around like these characters walking through these kind of cramped corridors and like back alleys and whatnot. And you know, you're also showing like the darker side of like of life in the walled city, when of course when someone actually loses their life, and you know, there's not much else that they could do about this. And you know, which was quite kind of shocking, but it, you know, it was very kind of it was very effective. It's just great filmmaking. And you know, Kenji Tanigaki did a great job as the martial arts choreographer. It's just kind of fast, frenetic, and it's just really kind of like, it just kind of really drew me in, and very rarely have I watched a film that would kind of like, you know, especially in a Hong Kong movie as of late, where I would actually be fully kind of engrossed throughout the whole runtime. I just did not see the kind of like the time. I think it was more or less about hour and a half, 2 hours or something like that. It was around about that time. But then the film was really fast paced. It just kind of drew me. It just didn't feel like I was watching a long movie at all. It just kind of goes on, because as the film goes on, it just kind of just picks up, and it's just so well detailed, great. And even the fact that this film had been in development since the early 2000s, because John Woo and Johnny To were meant to co-direct this film, and then you know, including people like Chow Yun-fat, Andy Lau, Tony Leung, Louis Koo was involved at that time, but nothing happened with that. Then Donnie Yen had actually kind of had something like maybe about 5-6 years ago or something, but then that didn't go ahead. And then on top of that, it was you know, this is when kind of Soi Cheang got involved, and you know, put together this great cast. I mean, you know, it's just such a marvelously, you know, glorious film. I mean, the fact that, you know, films like this I thought were like a thing of the past in Hong Kong. We wouldn't be getting these kind of like crime thrillers even based on our comic book. I mean, we had Young and Dangerous before, which was kind of like, you know, that started off a boom of triad movies from the mid-90s all the way up until around about the 2000s or so, which were like kind of like the youth triad orientated films. But then this film, it just doesn't really go into that whole kind of like, you know, kind of glorifying the triad or anything like that. It's just, you know, it's just a kind of like, it's a story more about how, you know, a man who's kind of like come from like adverse, you know, kind of circumstances, and how he's trying to make a living, but at the same time, how you got all these people around him, some good, some bad, and how, you know, the decisions he makes and the paths that he chooses, and how it kind of more or less shapes like more or less what the outcome of his life is going to be. When it comes to the rating of the film, I'm gonna say I'm biased, and I would say, I mean, because I knew this film was gonna be awesome, but yeah, I didn't expect it to be kind of like, you know, intriguing in genre and character development, and also like just well acted kind of performances. And great action, of course, but I would definitely say, you know, this is a 5 out of 5 movie for me, and it's just such a great job that Cine Asia had actually picked this movie up and decided to distribute it, because I clearly cannot wait for the Blu-ray for this film to drop. I am certainly going to be pre-ordering that, and then if anything, I'm probably definitely going to be watching this again. Even if I have to watch this in the cinemas, I'm going to watch this movie again. It's just such, you know, this gets the CMG, the Cool Movie Gram seal of approval. I would say definitely, if you're into action movies, if you like your like modern day martial arts type of films, or if you like your gangster movies, I mean, this is kind of like a great amalgamation of all of these elements, and you know, it's just, you know, great cinema, great kind of popcorn entertainment at the same time, with some great kind of, it's not just style but also substance as well. There's a lot of substance to this style, and I mean, Soi Cheang, he has actually made some great action martial arts movies like SPL to A Time for Consequences, and you know, it just shows that he revels in this genre, and he does a great job. And I hope that you know, he retains it. Doesn't just kind of like what tends to happen a lot of the times when sequels are announced, that they kind of rush it and they just kind of like just slap bang and then just make a product. They take it or leave it. I hope they kind of like spend more detail and kind of like try to kind of maybe build more in terms of like the characters and the relationships and everything that's going on within, like, for example, the whole Wall City, because there's 2 more installments that have actually been announced, considering the colossal success that the film's actually been experiencing in you know, in its native territory, Hong Kong, as well as even throughout the throughout the world. Like it's just where it's actually being released in the cinemas, it's actually getting a lot of like positive feedback, and having seen a Instagram post from Cine Asia saying that the screenings at cinemas, tickets are kind of like tickets are just selling really well, and the screenings are almost booked. Even the screening that I went to, it was actually pretty much full. I mean, most of the rows were filled with a lot of people who had actually come to watch this movie, and it just shows that if you make a great movie, people will turn up and watch it. So definitely a 5 out of 5 movie for me, and I hope that you do get to watch this film, because I just think it's absolutely incredible. And yeah, I can't wait for the sequels. I can't wait for the Blu-rays to drop, and definitely one I can see myself revisiting this on several occasions. Right, well, yeah, that was my review of Twilight of the Warriors Within, and I hope you enjoyed it. And if you've seen the film, let me know what you think, and who's your favorite character, what your favorite scenes in the films were, and just anything. Just let me know what you think, and yeah, I'll see you on my next video.